Hi there, I'm Ellen Johnson and I'm the owner and the founder of Serendipity Needleworks, and I'm your host this afternoon for Needlepoint TV. Welcome to another episode. This is the May the 14th edition of Needlepoint TV, and today we're going to chat a little bit about stop number 5 on the spring Threadventure Garden Tour. So if you'll do me a favor, go ahead and type in where you're watching from, because it's always great fun for me to see where you're watching from and to see who's with me. Go ahead and say hello, and if you can see me and hear me okay, then give me a thumbs up, because that's always helpful. All right, so I see we've got some thumbs up, so it looks like the technology is good to go. Thank you so much. I hope that you're having a wonderful day and a wonderful week. I cannot believe it, already to week number 5 on our Spring Threadventure Tour. This has been so much fun for me, and I hope it has been for you as well. So far, we've been to, let's recount. We've been to the garden in South Florida. We've been to the garden or plantation in South Carolina. We've been to a garden in Columbus, Ohio. And then last week we went to a garden in Pennsylvania. This week we are trekking clear cross country to Phoenix, Arizona, where we're going to be chatting a little bit about the Desert Botanical Garden that happens to be in that city. And I've never seen it personally, but it is from pictures that I've been able to collect and on their website. It is a lovely place, and in fact, if any of you have been there, I would love to know that too. That would be so exciting and interesting to know if you've had a chance to visit that particular garden. I know we've had several people who throughout the course of our virtual vacation this spring have been to several of the places that we have visited. So it would be terrific fun to know if you've been to this particular one as well. So let's see. Let me see who all we have here. Okie dokie. Oh my goodness, we've got a ton of folks. Like I said, I'm so excited to have you here with me. Goodness gracious, we have a lot of people. Okay, so let me see. We have, let's see. So Julie says, is this in Zoom? No, this is only on the Serendipity Needleworks Facebook page. And the recording, for those of you who are members of the Stitchers Club, will be put inside of your member portal a little bit later today. So, all right. Okay, so Sylvia says that she has been there, and Pamela says that she's been there too. So, okay, and Sylvia says that she's been there, and they were expecting a cold spell, so they were covering the plants up behind them as they went through the garden. So I can understand that. We've had to do that here this spring. We thought we were done with cold weather, but we had a cold snap that popped up, and so we had to put some covers over some of our more tender plants as well. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think we're going to try this, and let's see. There we go. You should be able to see week number 5 on the Serendipity Needleworks website. And I'm going to scroll through, and you can see there is actually a picture of a portion of the garden. And it's really, living in Alabama, this is one of the things that, and I'm going to scroll on down so you can see another picture too. Living in Alabama, this was quite a shock to my system when I made a trip out west to the Scottsdale area, and then also to the Grand Canyon, because here, I'm going to stop sharing just a sec so I can visit with y'all and just talk to you for a few minutes. So, taking a trip out west, when I was in, I think it was in junior high, we drove out to the Grand Canyon, my parents and I did, and so it was sort of a subtle shift in the landscape as you made your way across Texas, and then on over toward Arizona and to the Grand Canyon, to that area. The transition was subtle because we were in the car and we were making that trip. But when we went to Scottsdale, Rick and I went to Scottsdale, it was back in 1989, so that tells you 89, 99, oh my gosh, that's been 31 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. But anyway, when I was in Scottsdale for a convention, we flew in. And when we landed, it was like, oh my, everything is so brown. And then after having been there for several days, you begin to get used to it. And it really is, it's very interesting. You think about, and it depends on where you live in the United States, because our landscape is different all across this country, which is one of the beautiful things about it. We have such a diverse uh, topography here, or the landscape across the U.S. is so unique and so varied that if you like one particular thing, then you can find a place to live and enjoy that. Or if you like something different, we have just a little bit of everything. So, in fact, even here in Alabama, we have from mountains in northeast Alabama all the way down to the Gulf Coast, we have sandy beaches. So we have a wide range of landscape or topography here in Alabama. But getting back to out west into Scottsdale, after having been there for several days, you begin to get used to it. And the funny thing was, I don't know, I didn't really pay that much attention to it while I was there. I just became accustomed to it or got acclimated to it. And when we were coming back home, we flew into Atlanta and then had to change planes in Atlanta and fly into Birmingham. And we flew in the middle of the day, and this was in the summertime. And after having been out in Arizona for several days, when we started the descent from Atlanta into Birmingham, I don't know why it shocked me so much, but I just remember so vividly thinking, oh my gosh, everything is so green and so many different shades of green. And that's something that as time has passed, I've started noticing things like that a little bit more. I guess it's just age. You notice your surroundings maybe a little bit more. Maybe you have a greater appreciation for your surroundings. But in the springtime, you can drive across the Black Warrior River, which is the river that runs through my hometown, and you can see literally as the leaves are coming out on the trees every single day. If you drive across the bridge, you'll see new greens popping up, and and the trees change during the spring. So as the new leaves come onto the trees, they're more vivid, chartreuse green. And then as the season wears on, they get darker. And then by the time we get to August, going across that very same bridge, I can begin to see in late August, the trees, or some of them at least, are beginning to look, the leaves are starting to look tired, and they're beginning to lose some of their bright green or their dark green, and they're beginning to get a little bit yellow. So anyway, just an aside, but just notice your surroundings. And if you do that, even snap pictures. I did this actually when I was getting ready to stitch the Christmas ornament, the Tuscaloosa Christmas ornament, in order to make sure that I could stitch the tree line along the banks of the Black Warrior River that Kathy Schenkel painted on the ornament that she designed for my store. That was a custom design for us. She painted just a solid green, but I wanted it to have some depth. So I got, actually not on the Woolsey Fennell Bridge, is the bridge that is, it's the one that I go across the most, but we have two others. And so I went down to the one that's less traveled and got out of the car and took a picture. And you can see all the different greens. The pine trees are a deep evergreen color, and then the hardwood trees are varying shades of more bright greens and emerald greens. So it's really interesting. And so I would encourage you to take photographs, use your iPhone or your smartphone, or even just a camera. You can use a regular camera or a digital camera, and then also collect pictures and create a photo file so that when you're trying to get color right, then you have something to refer to, and you have you can get some ideas on maybe what would look like a really realistic tree line at a particular time of year. Now, obviously, the one that I took a picture, when I took that picture, I took a picture in the spring, but that's going to look completely different in the fall. So if I were trying to change the colors or the color scheme to convey a different season, then I could refer to a picture and then go in and change up some threads and have that work in that type of a situation. And I went way down a rabbit hole on that. Sorry, but that just an encouragement to you to be very mindful of your surroundings and appreciate the landscape around you, and take pictures and collect pictures, so that when you do find a canvas that has a particular design component on it that you may, may be out of season, then you have something that you can go back to and refer to. So now let's get back to our garden for this week. Like I said, I went way down a rabbit hole on color there. But anyway, we'll go back to this week's post about the Phoenix Botanical Garden. And you can see here something that I had not even thought about was the fact that there are so many different kinds of cacti. And I also learned that cactuses is an appropriate substitute for the plural of cactus. So you can say cactuses, you can say cacti, and actually a less used but also acceptable form of that word, plural form of that word, is cactus. So cactus itself can be an English lesson here, I guess. The cactus itself can be singular or plural. So I've used that throughout, and all these interchangeably throughout. So in case you were wondering. So you can see here that there is a picture of some golden barrel cactuses or cacti. And then you can look in the background and you can see there are some that are, more tall and cylindrical. These are short and squatty. You can see some that have lots of little arms coming off of them in the far right corner. And if you look back up here, actually, let me go back up to this one, and you can see, wait, let me go here. You can see that there are all different kinds of cactuses, and they have all different kinds of textures. And the easy way to be able to convey different textures, one easy way to be able to convey different textures, is by using different threads and by using different stitches. So I'm going to scroll down here and try not to go so fast so that I don't want to make anybody dizzy. But if you look at this canvas called Desert Garden by Purple Palm Designs, you can see that there are a variety of different textures illustrated here, or I guess illustrated here, based on the different colors and on the different lines that the artist used. And so in fact, I think that the staggered cross stitch, which is the stitch that's the focus for this week's blog post, is really something that you could use very well on this little fat green cactus. Well, both of these little fat green, well, there are three of them there. They look almost like watermelons with spines on them, but those three would be really good candidates for this particular, where is it? It's down here, this particular stitch. Now this is called the staggered cross stitch, and the staggered cross stitch is really not a hard stitch to do. I've got an example here that I'm going to show you in just a second. But if you look at the stitch diagram, you see it's illustrated in two different colors. You have your blue, which is your first step, and then you have the sort of a fuchsia color, which is your second step. So everything is on this one diagram because it fit real well. And so what you would do is you're going to work the first step, which is the numbered steps or the blue stitches. You're going to work those first, and then you're going to go back and fill in the gaps with the smaller stitches or the smaller cross stitches. Now this is what's called a combination stitch, and that's when you take at least two, sometimes more, but at least two different stitches and combine them to create a new stitch. So here you have a standard cross stitch that is over one canvas intersection, and then you also have a larger standard cross stitch which is worked over two canvas intersections. And it's, like I said, it's super easy to do. I'm going to try and I'm going to come back over here and show you a picture, or not a picture, but I'm going to show you the stitch actually worked. This is it right here. I've done two samples of it. This is 13 mesh canvas. This is watercolors here, and then this is Silk Lame Braid 18. This would be, I chose to do this in watercolors. On 13 count, on 18 count, the watercolors is too thick. You would have to use a thinner thread. So maybe use water lilies, use two yeah, probably 2 strands of water lilies on 18 mesh if you wanted to use this stitch to stitch a cactus, because anytime you have a stitch that's worked a cross stitch or that's a layered stitch, you want to use a lighter weight thread than you would typically use on that particular mesh size canvas. So you can see, like I said, that I used here, and I don't know how well that's going to show up, but I will take pictures of these and post them so you can see the still shot. But this is an example of the stitch worked in 18 Silk Lame braid 18, and it's worked on 13 mesh canvas. That's obviously a lighter weight thread than you would typically use on 13 mesh canvas if you were trying to achieve full coverage. I didn't stitch the small cross stitch on that one because I wanted you to be able to see that you had some options there. You could go back in if you wanted to, and you could stitch a French knot in the gap instead of the cross stitch. You could also put a bead there, and using that particular thread would be super cute on a Christmas ornament that had a cactus on it. I know a lot of people who live in Texas or maybe Arizona or New Mexico or in California, in some of the parts of the southwestern United States, there are lots and lots of really cute Christmas ornaments that have a cactus popped in there. And that, using that lime green Silk Lame braid is a really fun way to add some sparkle to a canvas that, is for the holiday season. So that's just another example. So I did, like I said, I used this particular stitch with watercolors, but you could use other threads as well. There are gracious plenty other threads that you could definitely use for that particular stitch. You could use pearl cotton, just plain DMC pearl cotton. You could also use, like I said, water lilies. You could use DMC cotton floss. Just about anything, but again, you do have to be careful that what you're using is not going to make it too bulky. And something else to keep in mind is that a tightly twisted thread, something like, well, even vineyard merino wool, it's got that tight twist, just like pearl cotton number 5 has a tight twist. Those would be good threads for this particular stitch because you get the stitch definition. You can actually see the individual components of the stitch. When you get a thread that's too fluffy or too fuzzy, you lose that stitch definition and it ends up looking like a blob, which is another reason you want to use a thread that's thinner, which is the reason I used the one strand of watercolors on the 13 mesh canvas. If I had done that on an 18 mesh canvas, it would have just looked like a big blob. You wouldn't have been able to see the stitch definition because it would have been too small and it would have just been, like I said, just a big blob of thread. Something else to keep in mind, and this is something that's a little bit off track, but it is pertinent. Anytime you do a layered stitch and you use a thread that has metallic in it or is a metallic thread, you're not going to see the definition of the individual stitch components as much as you would if you used a flat or a matte thread, because the light reflects off the metallic, and so it ends up looking more like a blob in that case too. So just a little FYI there. I wanted to make sure that I shared with you that there are several other uses for this particular stitch, and I have my little cheat sheet here. I want to make sure that I share them all with you. So not only can you use this stitch for cactuses, but you can also use it for trees, the tops of trees. If you had a canvas that had maybe a garden theme and had some shrubbery, you could use it for the shrubs. You could also use it for the treetops. You can use this stitch for Christmas trees. Let's see what else. You can use it for hedges, which is like shrubs, grass. You can also use it for fields. If you had like some fields of grass or some fields, I don't know, you maybe even had there are some Maggie and Company designs that are really fun landscapes. So you could definitely use this stitch to give you some different texture, to show a little bit of depth perspective there. And then you can also use this for cobblestone streets, pebbly paths. You could use it for rocks. You could use it for sand on a beach. It would also work for that, especially if you had a canvas that was showing a beach where maybe there were lots of beach umbrellas and beach chairs and things like that, so that it would kind of look like the sand had, you know how sand looks different if it's a windswept beach where there hasn't been very much traffic on the beach, as opposed to a beach where there have been lots of people walking around and playing all day long. The sand looks all jumbled up, and it has, I don't know, it's not smooth and windblown like it is if you're on a rather deserted beach. So those are just some kinds of things that you can use this stitch for as well. And I have something else I'm going to share with you. I'm going to reach back here and I'm going to try not to let the light be a problem, because I know this light is super bright that's behind. And so anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole, but let's see. So let me look back up here and see if we have a question, because I thought I saw this move. Let me go. Let's see. We have... Oh, Nan says that she and her husband had a private tour of this garden years ago. That is so cool. I love that. I love this too. Sylvia says after growing up in Florida, her foliage shocker was that she had to learn which side of the bulb was up before planting. So true. Okay, so let's see. We have a question. Leanne said, or asked rather, how would you emphasize the prickly spines? So when you're doing an interpretation of a canvas or an interpretation on a canvas, if you work, let me go back and share the picture of that canvas. Again, let me see if I can scroll down without making you too dizzy. Okay, so if, for example, you were looking at the big green canvas that is in the upper left-hand corner, or the big green cactus that is in the upper left-hand corner, you'll notice that it does have some spines sticking off of it. So a way to convey that would be to use the stitch on the cactus and then come back and add some long straight stitches to give it that extra, I would say, texture or extra depth. So you could come back with the same thread, or maybe with something that had a little bit different texture, to come back and add those. Just do long straight stitches. And this is where taking a picture or making a photocopy of your canvas before you actually stitch it comes in super handy, because you can use that as a reference for where to go back and add those long straight stitches. Now obviously you would see along the edge where those are sticking up, but the ones that are on the surface that look more flat, because this is a two-dimensional piece of art, it's on a flat painted canvas. So in order to be able to know where to go back and put those top stitches, those long straight top stitches, to give you that extra little bit of detail, you would definitely need something that you could refer back to. So that would be one way that you could go back and emphasize those prickly spines. All right, so the name of the stitch, yes, indeed, is the staggered cross stitch. I see, and thank you, Wendy, for answering that. So, all right, so I wanted to share with y'all today a little gadget, especially those of you that are on my email list. Y'all know about this already. I shared this with you there, but I wanted to show you how it works. So a member of the Citrus Club, Anne, shared with us that she found the niftiest gadget on Amazon that she uses to flatten her ribbon type threads. You know that if you work with ribbon with Neon Rays or Neon Rays Plus, any of these ribbon type threads from Neon Rays, from Rainbow Gallery, when you take them off the card, they are kinky like that. They have those little folds or bends in them, and that can be real frustrating. So you can use a flat iron like you use on your hair, and that works, but sometimes they're kind of cumbersome. And Anne found this fun little bitty one. It's called a lipstick, and it's rechargeable, and you can plug it into a battery pack. So it comes with a USB cord so you can plug it in. You can see there on the end that it's got the little battery pack, and when you open it, that's it. It's 7 inches long. It's very small, so it will fit in your project bag super easy. And it has a little button on the side, and you just turn it on. And it doesn't get really, really hot, which is kind of nice. It's supposed to be a travel flat iron that you can use to to fluff up your hair during the day, but it doesn't get really, really hot, which, like I said, is a good thing, because so many times these threads, if you use a flat iron that's made for your hair, sometimes they get really, really hot, and you have to be super careful because you don't want to melt your thread. Well, I don't know, this one, yeah, it's warming up. You don't want to stick your fingers in there and touch it. And I'm not going to cut this off, but I am going to go ahead and just show you. You can see that you just put it between and you run it through, and it straightens out your thread, and it is so much easier to work with when this neon rays. You can see the difference actually between the two. The side on the over here I haven't straightened yet, and then this one I have. Super easy, and then you just turn it off and put it back in its little case, and off you go. So a really great little gadget to have in your toolbox and in your project bag. And the nice thing is, there's so many, especially if you're going to be going to a national seminar. I know we're not going to be doing that this year, but if you've gone to seminars in the past, A&G and EGA, I know A&G has said that you can't bring anything that has to be plugged in, like to the wall. So the nice thing about this, it will hold a charge, but you can also plug it into a battery pack, and it's just super, super handy. So I want to thank Ann so much for sharing that with us, and I hope that you find it helpful too. All right, well, y'all, we are right at 3:30. I appreciate ever so much you being here with me this afternoon and allowing me to share a little bit more about the staggered cross stitch and how you can use it on your needlepoint canvases. Like I said, it's not only good for cactuses or cacti or cactus, whatever you prefer to call it, but you can use it for other things too. And of course, you can use any number of different kinds of thread. So I will call that an afternoon. Those of you who are in the Stitchers Club, we are going to be gathering on Zoom here shortly for another, installment of Canvas Call, and I will see y'all there. Until next week, have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy stitching. Bye for now.